So let's talk a little bit about the right way to do things. Okay, so there's a lot of information on this page, so I'm going to go through it slowly. This is really the heart of a lot of what I want to talk about. So job search to me is first about strategy, and then it's about execution. So if you skip the strategy, as I mentioned on the prior page, you're running around with a bit of a chicken with your head cut off, because there's a lot of execution steps in job search, as we talked about. There's resume, there's the LinkedIn profile, there's how do you network, your cover letter, how do you prepare for interviews, and then receiving the offer. But you have to really go through the strategy first. So even if you know you were born to be an investment banker, even if you know you were born to be a technologist and you wanted to work for Google, the fact is you still have to think about what it is you're doing. So if you're thinking about making the next step, well, what is the title that you're thinking about? There's so many different titles. I was actually helping a client today try to figure out whether the proper title was solution strategy, program manager, project manager. There were so many titles that this client could potentially have at different firms. Unless this client knows very, very clearly what title that they're capable of and what is the next title in their career, they could get caught making a flat move and not a move up. So I want you to think strategically about what kind of a company you want to be, which
Kachi,
you want to be in.
carry your iPad and come out of there.
How are you able to learn and move up the whole totem pole? So if you don't go through all of these and many other strategic type questions, again, you just go from job to job and you don't really think carefully about what you've done. And I unfortunately am a casualty, so to speak, of not focusing on strategy. So my background, very simple, was I was in investment banking for 15 years. I was really good at one aspect of what I did, but I kept rolling with the job and rolling with the job and rolling with the money. And the money was great. And at the end of 15 years, when I got laid off with the recession in 07 and 08 and 09, I was left with a part where I hadn't thought strategically about my career, and I went through a 2-year period of layoffs, or a period of layoff for myself. Had I thought every 3 or 5 years strategically about, am I in the right place? I was at Merrill Lynch, which was a great place at the time, but I've been in this department for 3 years. Is this where I want to be for the next 3 years? I sort of closed my eyes and just rolled in with the money, and that hurt me eventually. So really thinking strategically about your career is just so incredibly important. And when you skip the strategy, as I mentioned, things just go completely haywire. And each portion of the strategy, as we'll talk about in a few minutes, each portion of the strategy, you can get feedback from people cross-functionally. You can get feedback from the marketplace and change things around. You may think you want to be in Google, but you know what? Google's not the right place for everybody. It's got its own individual, or pick any other large tech company, it's got its own individual style and culture. So before everyone just tries to get into Google, you may want to find out whether it's the right culture for you. And there's ways to figure that out very, very quickly. And then to the extent Google is the right place for you, great. To the extent it's not, then you can find out what are the other best places for you. So really encourage everyone to think as strategically as possible. If you don't, the whole job search becomes a very frustrating, very, very time consuming and very inefficient process. In terms of the execution, I think the steps are relatively straightforward, but there's a number of items within each step to really keep in mind. So I know many of you may not be in the United States, but I think that what I'm talking about here is relatively universal.